Evening all, welcome to the Pyramid Podcast, where three lads discuss all things English football pyramid. On today's episode, we'll have a look back at the key action from the Premier League, including Spurs' controversial win over Liverpool and Wolves shocking the champions, which was predicted by Loro. A look ahead to game week 2 of English teams' European adventures, where standout tie has to be Newcastle PSG. We'll review some of the key games across the wider EFL before previewing more midweek action coming up. And the Pyramid Pod treble is out for redemption after a Jonathan Woodgate-esque debut. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and once again, I'm joined by Tom Lawrence and Tom Gallagher. Chaps, we'll start at Tottenham-Liverpool. Loro, a game that was a great win for Spurs, but marred by a bit of controversy from an officiating point of view.
Yeah, well, I'll just start on a football note because that game was a couple of minutes away from being a very, very impressive, probably one of the results of the season from Liverpool. The way that they set up against, firstly with 10 men and then with 9 men against a decent Spurs side, I thought was really impressive. And the funny thing about it was, a little bit like Newcastle as well, even when, probably not with 9, but even down to 10, they still seemed like a threat. Tottenham still sort of were there thinking, we don't want to commit too many forward because Liverpool got these. And I think even with 9 men, every time there was a set piece, Van Dijk went up, the defenders went up, the big men went up, and they were still trying to get something from the game, which I thought was really admirable. And if it wasn't for the last moment of madness at the end, then we might have had a completely different talking point. But like you say, I think the big story from that game is obviously the officiating, unfortunately, and VAR again. I think there's a train of thought to suggest that every single big decision was wrong. I personally don't think Curtis Jones should have been sent off. We know what happened with the goal that wasn't. And even Diogo Jota sending off, I think the second yellow was a booking, but the first one, whoever he was adjudged to a foul actually just tripped up and it wasn't a foul at all. So an absolute disaster on all fronts from the refereeing decisions. But if we start with probably the biggest one, which is the goal, I've actually got probably a surprisingly balanced view on that because it was bad and it was really, really bad. The only thing that they could really come out and say that would have appeased me was hands up, absolute cock up on our behalf. We got that horribly wrong. There was a miscommunication. We are so sorry. Fine. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. And to be fair, we talk about VAR and it looking for ways in which to affect the game negatively, which it does. It tries to rule out goals and it tries to send people off. The on-field linesman gave that off. So if there wasn't VAR, it would have been offside anyway, and Liverpool still wouldn't have got the goal. So we don't have to go down the lines of Liverpool want a replay and they should be awarded a point or anything like that. That's ridiculous. I actually think that's nipped that in the bud. And whatever they think the necessary punishments are for Darren England and his assistant or whoever it is that's getting the blame for this, a couple of games maybe suspended or officiating at lower levels, and that's fine. But I think the VAR decisions on the red cards are the bigger annoyance for me, because particularly the Curtis Jones one, we talked about this the other day. I think might have been a Chelsea player getting sent off against Villa. The tackles now are completely different. We're not talking about the tackle and the action of the move. We're talking about what's the worst freeze frame we can find and what's the worst action we can then go on to punish that. And it just looks like in every single move that is sent to VAR, they're looking for a split freeze frame within it to find a reason to send someone off. And that was what was annoying. And I think, maybe bring Tigo in here as well to see what you thought on it. I think we were all pretty much on the same page. That wasn't a sending off, was it?
No, absolutely not. To be honest, Laura, I can't disagree with anything you just said there. I've not a lot more to add. I thought it was one of Spurs' worst performances of the season. I know it's difficult to play against 10 men and then against 9 men because sort of your plans and etc. go out the window a little bit. And obviously Liverpool dropped deep. But I thought, especially in the first half, and I think you mentioned it, Liverpool looked dangerous, so dangerous on a counter-attack. And I thought Spurs looked really naive to that. They just kept on playing openly, and it was almost like they thought, well, yeah, we're playing against 10 men, so we'll eventually get the goal. And obviously they did get the goal, but conceded a few chances. Gakpo got the equaliser. But the sort of talking points from the game will be the decisions. I'm trying to come at it from a sort of non-biased point of view, because I'm obviously a Man United fan, so obviously I enjoyed the fact that Liverpool lost. But yeah, that Curtis Jones one, to me, it just looks like in the sort of the video of it and not the freeze frame, it looks like he's almost tried to do a little Cruyff turn, misjudged it a little bit. His legs or his toes sort of bounced up over the ball and onto Basuma's ankle. And like any freeze frame that you do to that, and the VAR sort of video showed the referee that freeze frame straight away, it was clearly going to be a red card. I thought it was a wrong decision. I put it out to the followers of Football Tweet with the freeze frame saying, what do you think of this? And they all slated me and said it was a red card. But obviously Gary Neville thought it wasn't a red card as well. Yeah, look, and with the other decisions, it's just there's a little bit of incompetence at the minute. And like you say, Laura, what can they do apart from put their hands up and like they're basically damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they just go into their silo and don't say anything, then everyone's saying what's going on. It's a conspiracy. And if they come out and apologize, they get slated for apologizing because they've made 14 apologies in like since 2022 or something ridiculous. I don't know how to deal with that one, to be honest. But the problem with VAR is the expectation levels that it raised amongst football fans and amongst managers and players. It basically said, right, now officials don't have the right to get any decision wrong because they've got VAR. And now clearly they make mistakes week on week, and just like players do, just like managers do, and it just seems to be getting picked up. But you're right to say that first incident, the Diaz goal, if VAR wasn't a thing, it would have been offside anyway, and then they would have just talked about it in the studio after, saying it was the wrong decision, and the linesman shit, and then they would have said we need VAR. So it's like that nothing you can say will please everyone. Nothing you can do, no solution you can offer will please anyone. So there's not really like I don't know where to go.
Well, let me say this that I think will please quite a few people. I've been balanced on this, and now this is what side of the fence I sit on when it comes to VAR. Fucking scrap the lot. It hasn't worked. It was brought in to try and eradicate errors and make the game better. What it's doing is I was listening to TalkSport 2 earlier, waiting for the 4th round preliminary qualifying round on the FA Cup draw to see who Yeovil were getting. Before that, they were having a discussion on it. And someone made a good point. I'm not sure who it was they had on. He said, when you're supporting your football team and you go to the games or you watch it on telly, what you're doing is a lot of the time, particularly as a fan, is you're chasing a buzz. And whether that's your team scoring a last minute goal and you want it again. And now at the highest level where we have VAR, you can't have that. Someone scores a goal, there's a ripple of applause, and then inevitably this system is going to come in and try and find a way to get rid of it. So what we've got now is VAR that is looking for ways to get rid of goals and looking for a way of sending players off, and it's making errors. So what's the fucking point of it? If the linesman had given offside at the weekend and he was wrong, I'm more than happy for Jurgen Klopp to blast him at the end of the game and that be it. I don't mind there being some mistakes in the game, but I do mind there being mistakes in the game where we have 2 officials up in a box watching it on replays like we are at home that can see what's happening with it, and they're still making mistakes. Now, on this occasion, for the offside goal, they put their hands up and said, look, there's nothing we can say to even defend it. That's fine. But on these red cards, it's just so annoying. No one wants goals being scraped off, and no one wants games being ruined because of silly red cards. So my position on the VAR is get rid of the fucking lot. And I don't care about this, the genie's too far at the bottle. That's a load of rubbish. Tried it, nice idea, hasn't worked. Let's go back to our beautiful game.
The problem is, with that is that not everyone agrees with you that it wasn't a red card. Like, I obviously agree with you. I don't think it was a red card. I think, Murphy, you might agree with us as well. But quite a lot of people, like, this is the thing. These incidents, and especially these red card incidents, they're all subjective. So, So the mistakes that are being made through VAR are all subjective, apart from obviously the offside one that we saw on the weekend, which is just an absolute howler, which is such a big howler that it's almost... You write it off completely, because I guess it's just like Murphy missing an open goal on the weekend from a yard or whatever. Sorry, Murph. But do you know what I mean? But like, so most of these incidences are subjective. So to back up your point, I agree. VAR or football would be better without without VAR, but it's too late for that. It is too late for that.
Why is that though? Why is it too late? Why can't we say we've tried this and it hasn't worked?
With football though, like everything's about money, isn't it? I bet it makes companies X million pounds a year having the technology for VAR, and ultimately football at that level always comes down to financials, and there will be money that is being made on all sides from having that. So there's absolutely no way that it will be scrapped. Lauro, just to think about VAR slightly differently, obviously spent most of the summer watching the Ashes, didn't we? And you'd think like there is Snicko there, which seems to be fairly kind of consistent. That's, has the batsman touched it? Has he not? Go up. LBW the same. That for me is the same as the offside a bit, but you just don't see those mistakes being made. But like in cricket, you still have that buzz of like, I don't know, someone takes a wicket, Broad takes a wicket, and then it's like, oh, the batsman's Steve Smith's reviewed it straight away, and then it goes upstairs, and then it is going on to hit the stumps, and you have that like moment of buzz. So could that work for football?
Yeah, you've just said it. The reason it doesn't take it away from cricket is because you know it's not going to be every decision. You get, what is it, 3 reviews per innings or something like that? If you went to a thing in football where a manager had to go, right, we want to review that one, and if you're wrong, you lose one. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you get 2 per half. I don't know, 1 per half, something like that. And if you get it right, you keep it, and if you get it wrong, it goes. What that would eradicate then is every single decision, whether it's a red card, whether it's an offside, whether it's a goal, all the fans in the stadium. When Leeds are in the Prem, watching them week in, week out, every time we scored a goal, I'm looking to see whose toe might be offside or who's pointing in the wrong direction. And I mean, I remember Bamford having a horrible one at Crystal Palace a few years ago where he's pointing where he wants the ball and they've drawn the T-shirt line up like a millimetre away and disallowed the goal. All of that would go. So I like the cricket, and even tennis do the same, don't they? With Hawkeye, you have to review it and you lose your review. And it works in those because you know it's not going to disrupt the flow. You're only going to have a couple of incidents throughout a game if there's a contentious decision. In football, it's every single big decision. How often do we see a goal now that's just given and there's no controversy around it at all? There's no check whatsoever.
We watched the Burnley United game, didn't we? And Johnny Evans scored from a corner. And I remember being sat there with you thinking, like, just a goal whipped in from the corner where nothing's up with it and you can celebrate a United goal. And even that, Hodgkin's then stood in the way. You know, the Garnacho one at Arsenal, I know that's gone off to be proven that it was offside from the angle that the lines are drawn, but he's running through and scores, and you're thinking we've just won at the Emirates. But you know that just from when that goal happened, that it looked tight, and you now don't celebrate, do you? Or you don't celebrate fully because you know that you might get your bloody heart broken 30 seconds later. Tomo?
See, the thing is with this technology business is this, right? So at first we had goal line technology, didn't we? And I think we can all agree the reason why that's worked is because it's not subjective, it's objective. Yeah, it's either in or it isn't in. And that's the same with offside. It's either, see, I know this one on the weekend was an absolute howler, but it is technically the same with offside. You're either on or you're offside. I think from next season, they'll bring in, and the Premier League decided against bringing in that semi-automated offside system, which was used at the World Cup and it was used very well. And it's basically twice as quick as officials. And that sort of incident that happens at Tottenham would not have happened, would it? Because it's automated. So that will come in next season, I assume so, or potentially even after January. And then so the offside issue will be sort of a non-event, if you know what I mean. We will no longer be talking about it because, like in goal line technology, it's either on or it's off. That's objective. It's not a subjective decision. What you guys are talking about is the subjective decisions, the red cards, do you know what I mean? Little bits and pieces, the bad tackles that they're looking to disallow goals, or they're looking for reasons basically to intervene. I think that needs to be stopped. I don't think it will be. I don't think we'll scrap that side of VAR. I think it will carry on. And I think the powers that be will just try and become more competent at using the system. Because I do agree with you, Laura. I do think we should get rid of it, but it's just not going to happen.
But just very quickly, like, you're right. The goal line technology is absolutely, it's either fact or it's either in or it's out. I do think it's subjective, the offside one. Here's a couple of reasons, just very, very quickly. The freeze frame in which what the exact split second that the ball leaves the foot of the assister, right? Yeah. The fact that the VAR officials are the ones putting the lines on, and they're judging what part of the arm is offside or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And also, the Johnny Evans one you just talked about, Merv, that was ruled out because someone was stood in front of the keeper. Well, how do we know? Well, that's still subjective. They're still deciding whether the person that stood in front of the keeper, Ollie Watkins scored one at the weekend that wasn't offside, and there was someone stood right in front of the keeper that was in an offside position. The Johnny Evans one was ruled out because someone was stood in front of the keeper, and they did rule it out. So there's inconsistencies. If they do bring in that World Cup, did you just say we're getting it in the after winter or something? The automated system.
Well, if
they bring that in, then
yeah, they didn't bring it in for this. The Premier League or the PGMOL decided against bringing it in this season for some reason, and I'm assuming after the sort of controversies that have been happening, they'll bring it in for next season. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll give us a little bit more consistency, because you would have thought a computer will have the same ideas on every single situation, but it sounds like it's not going to happen. But if it was up to me, we would just get rid of all of it other than goal line technology, which has failed, I think, once, hasn't it? The Sheffield United Villa one a few years ago, and that's it. And apologies, Blades fans, but there we go.
Yeah, I really hope they do bring that in. I think the only thing I just say on VAR as well before we move on, boys, because we speak about this to a blue in the face, is some of these decisions are massive, massive decisions. Like if that Spurs Liverpool game was decided who got top 4 towards the end of the season, that could be like, right, Jurgen Klopp's not got top 4 for a second year in a row for Liverpool. So this player now wants to leave. Let's just say Salah decides to then go to Saudi. These can be like the big talking points.
Murph, let's put this into perspective though. Like without VAR, these decisions will go against you and for you in equal measure. So
100%. And you then say that is human error. And that's the beautiful game, that one day a referee will give you onside one day when you were off, and they will give you offside when you were on. And you go, right, well, that was human error. That is part of football. It always was part of football. You win some, you lose some. This is now where people like Jurgen Klopp or whoever might feel so aggrieved because they've got technology to stop that from happening, and it's still happening. So if it just goes back to all of the benefits of VAR, which is slow down the game, take away those moments of pure ecstasy where you think you've done something you haven't, was so that we would get more correct decisions. So we weren't just talking about bad officiating decisions on field. We're now doing that about on-field and off-field officiating decisions. So yeah, I something's got to change with that very soon. It won't ever go away, VAR, but there doesn't seem to be too many positives of it at the minute. But having said that, Spurs win again. Big Angie's bus rolls on, Lauro, so I'm sure you're very happy about that. And we spoke about if they could get through Liverpool, they had a few winnable fixtures and no Europe to contend with. And we'll come on to other results at the minute, including Man City, but a great weekend for them overall. So we just touched on Ollie Watkins, boys. He scored a hat-trick at the weekend. Villa at home versus Brighton. I think a game that I called Brighton win. I think you two might have gone for Villa, actually. And it ended up being a Villa win, albeit a bit more one-sided than expected. 6-1. Tomo?
Yeah, it's one of those just mad games. Brighton, obviously, they're always scoring loads of goals or conceding loads of goals. They're a really fun team to watch, and just felt like one of those games where just everything went wrong for them and everything went right for Ollie Watkins. He's had a goal scoring wise, he's had a slow start to the season. He's got a couple of assists for the FPL team, and that's why he was still in mine this weekend. And obviously, I know he scored last weekend, but some of those goals, they're great. Like the first one was just the tap in, but then the second two were like little deflections, and it was just one of those days that just everything was going well for you. And I did a little bit. Obviously, they were the much better team, and they deserved the win. It was great, especially for my FPL team. But the sort of XG stats was a lot closer than that, obviously. And Brighton dominated possession wise. It was just think it was one of those games where if you're a Brighton fan, or you just sort of quickly forget about it and chuck it in the bin and move on to Marseille. In the week, De Zerbi, he mentioned something after the game, which I think he said something very similar when they lost 5-1 to Everton last year. He basically said, our next game, which obviously is going to be against Marseille, he was like, I'm confident you'll see the real Brighton, and I'm confident I fully back my players, etc., which I quite enjoyed. And I felt like sometimes as a player, you feel like they're in the dressing room after getting spun 6-1. Their confidence is going to be on the floor. And then for De Zerbi to come out and just say that, it just gives you a little bit of lift. So I think it was good management from him. A little thing I actually just posted on Football Tweet. Did you see Jason Steele's FPL team?
No, he didn't have Watkins in it.
He had Watkins in it, and he had himself in it.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so he had himself in it. He had Watkins in it. Obviously, conceded 3 goals against Watkins, and Watkins got a couple of FPL assists as well, didn't he? But yeah, just one of those games. I predicted a Villa win, so 3 points to me.
Laurie?
Yeah, I mean, I predicted a Villa win as well, but that was, I don't know. We sort of stumbled across a conversation last week, didn't we? Talking about smoke and mirrors De Zerbi. That's a 3-1 loss to West Ham, a loss at home to Athens in the Cup, and now beat 6 by Villa. No clean sheets this season, I think I'm right in saying. I'm sort of caught between a rock and a hard place here, because on one hand, I'm thinking it's Brighton. Like, they are still, Brighton are one of the smaller clubs in the Premier League, but the progress that they've made and the praise that we put on them, and from what we expect from them, I'm not happy with that 6-1 defeat, to be honest with you. There was a couple of calamitous. I mean, the Estupiñán own goal was ridiculous. He looked like he was stumbling home from a nightclub or something, and it just hit the end of his foot and went in. And like, they just sort of collapsed. And I don't know. I want to see a little bit more from Brighton on these games against your Villas and your West Hams. I've said it before, like, the sort of, all right, Villa are probably quite a good side now and maybe pushing top 6 or 7, but those games where you don't know they're definitely going to win against the top sides and the ones you definitely expect them to win against the bottom sides, they need to start going to Villa Park and putting up better performances than that. And there's just a couple of signs there that De Zerbi's maybe got a little bit of work to do before he's in contention for Real Madrid, in my opinion. And he also tinkered it and put a young lad in midfield again, didn't he? He makes a lot of sort of pep roulette types changes to his side, and I think he might be in danger of over tinkering a little bit. Far be it from me to advise Robert De Zerbi what he does with his team, but I wasn't happy with that. Even though I predicted Villa to win, I didn't expect it to be an absolute massacre, and it was. But fair play to Ollie Watkins, and fair play to Villa, who I think have won 10 games in a row now. So it is a fortress. There's no shame in going to Villa Park and losing, but there is some shame in going there and getting hit for 6, and when you haven't kept a clean sheet all season.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Lauro, in that if De Zerbi's going to take the credit for his pep roulette, where he just brings off a 19-year-old Paraguayan who scores a brace with 2 overhead kicks, then when he plays an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old in midfield and gets overrun and a team goes direct against them and sort of bypasses this young midfield and they get a hammer, and he's going to have to take that as well. And that's life as a Premier League manager. Yeah,
can we just mention Villa's midfield quickly?
Yeah, go on.
You thinking Douglas Luiz and Boubacar Kamara and McGinn, and then obviously they signed Tielemans in the summer on a free, and he's sort of working his way into the team. And then Jacob Ramsey, who's been like super impressive over the last couple of seasons, breaking through. He has been injured at the start of the season. He obviously come on Saturday, didn't he, and got a really good goal. All of a sudden, it's like their strongest part of their team. And Jacob Ramsey, for me, I know this is obviously a massively early shout, but there's a chance there for him to get into that England squad for the Euros if he can sort of have a good season with Villa, because we spoke about England's centre mid problems or lack of depth in there, and because obviously you've got Conor Gallagher at the minute, couple of issues there. So I think there's a chance for him to get into the team if he does well, has another good season with Villa.
Just on the England squad, a couple points to pick up on that. So Gareth Southgate was watching the game. I think there's always a secondary striker position behind Kane available, isn't there? And you've got your Callum Wilsons, Ivan Toney, if he comes back in January, has a good second half to the season. Eddie Nketiah's been in there. Ollie Watkins, someone who you boys think, I suppose if he keeps showing out the goals, could go to the Euro. Seems like a decent character, hard worker.
Yeah, he's just 100%. I was surprised he didn't get the call up earlier on in was it September, the internationals? Yeah. I was surprised he didn't get called up for the first international break. The next one is after this weekend. I think the England team will get announced in a couple of days. I'm pretty sure he'll be in it. He scored 2 hat-tricks for Villa this season, which is, I think they mentioned it on Match of the Day, is the first Aston Villa player to score 2 hat-tricks in a season since the 70s. Him under Unai Emery is a problem.
Yeah.
And he hasn't quite got going goal scoring wise until Saturday in the Premier League. But yeah, you fully expect him to carry on that good form. And Murph, can I just ask you, do you have him in your FPL team still?
No, I brought him out before game week 6 for Alvarez, who has blanked, and then he did score on Saturday, but that's not really consolation when Watkins gets 23. But that's my story as a FPL manager. I'm taking Rashford out this week, so I'm sure he'll be scoring versus Brentford at the weekend. Stay on that England theme, boys. Loro, another one for you. We spoke about centre-backs who can partner John Stones in the summer if Maguire's not getting game time. Lad I play football with, massive Villa fan, bangs on about Ezri Konsa and has for a couple years now. Looks like he's, from over the past sort of 7 years, played pretty much every game of each season for Charlton for a couple years, then a season at Brentford, and now at Villa. I think he looks fairly impressive, Konsa. Do you give him any chance of going to the Euros?
No. And the reason I don't is because Gareth Southgate doesn't like to change his centre-backs too much, does he? And he, like, even people like Lewis Dunk and Tomori, in Serie A that have consistently good performances, still can't get in over the likes of Harry Maguire. Ezri Konsa, I don't think he might have made 1 or 2 squads, but I don't remember him ever having any kind of run or looking under Gareth Southgate. So I don't think that's a discussion even worth having. It should be, because that centre-back partner of John Stones is probably one place that should be the most up for grabs. And if you're an English centre-half that's in good form, as Ezri Konsa has been for a few years now for Aston Villa, it should be a season where he could think to himself, I'll get myself in there. But if I was him, I wouldn't hold out any hope whatsoever.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's a valid point. I think it'd be interesting. I think with Tyrone Mings injured, there's a spot up for grabs there, even if Maguire does go, and maybe another one. So I'd be really, really interested to see if Konsa makes the squad that's upcoming. There's an international break for the next 2 weeks. Am I right in saying, Tomo?
Yeah, it's after this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll all look forward to that. I don't think Watkins is quite a shoo-in as you boys make out either. I think he needs to do it more consistently. At the end of last season, he had a couple of games where he was unplayable. And he scored 2 hat-tricks this year, but one of them, I think, one was against Hibs. They're not both in the Premier League. Him and Callum Wilson have both got 4 goals this season, but Callum Wilson's done it in about half the time. And Callum Wilson's the one that's been the second striker recently. So I'm not sure he's done enough to get him out of the squad yet. And you're not going to take 3 number. Hopefully that position's completely redundant. We don't need to use them. But we're not going to take 3 of them, are we? We're going to take Harry Kane and one other, I would imagine. And then a lot of sort of attacking midfielders / wide players. And I'm not too sure Ollie Watkins has done enough to get rid of Callum Wilson just yet. So I wouldn't be counting my chickens he's in the squad either, to be honest with you.
No, I think that he's just got a live chance. But you might be right. As you say, Kane's an absolute shoo-in. Maybe your second striker is someone who can come off the bench and grab a goal, which Wilson's doing consistently. So probably right there. Guys, we will move on from that game, and mighty impressive victory for Villa it was too, but move on to Wolves versus Man City. And I think Tomo probably got a start with giving a shout out for Loro. I think both of us kind of scoffed and laughed at his prediction that Wolves would win it, but that turned out to be the case. So I think kudos to Loro for that shout, and I'll bring him in to just have a bit of a say about Wolves' display in the overall game.
Yeah, well, firstly, look, Manchester City rightfully so should be favourites for every single game in the Premier League season, and probably maybe Arsenal away, but even that they're probably still favourites for. So you've got to try and take an educated guess at when they're going to slip up. And I think that when I listened back to the pod, I was actually quite impressed with myself for showing my workings out. And I think that you take Rodri at that midfield, bearing in mind that Kevin De Bruyne is out as well, and all of a sudden you're starting with Núñez, a new signing, and Kovacic, a new signing, and the 2 that you've got off the bench are Calvin Phillips and Bob. That's a little bit of a problem for them, I think. I don't think there's anyone in there. It's a far cry from KDB, Gundogan and Rodri. And that was one of my things at the start of the season where I didn't actually think they'd get off to anywhere near as good a start as they did. Because taking out Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne getting injured, and bringing in Nunes or bringing in Kovacic, I think is quite a big downgrade. But I also said that Wolves were due a win because they're playing really well. And one of the players that is playing extremely well is Neto. And like someone said the other day on Twitter, can't believe he's still at Wolves. The only explanation for him still being at Wolves are his injury problems, aren't they? But every time you watch him, he's just absolutely electric. And what a player he is. If you could guarantee he was fit all the time, he'd probably be at City or an Arsenal or Real Madrid or someone like that. So I'll let you boys talk about the game because I haven't got too much to add to my prediction. That was Wolves have been playing well and a due a win, and Man City lost in the week and they're going to miss Rodri. And I think that's how it transpired.
Hello.
That's the most smug 2 minutes of his entire life. But yeah, fair play to you, Loro. One of those games when it went exactly how you expected it to go. City completely dominated it, and Kovacic actually played that Rodri role. And if you watch the match of the day highlights, he was at fault for quite a few. Well, he's at fault for the Neto own goal incident, and he was at fault for quite a lot of the Wolves counter attacks that led to their sort of attacking play, and I think eventually to their second goal as well. I didn't see this before the game, but Pep Guardiola referred to Hwang as the Korean guy in his press conference.
Yeah.
And Wolves tweeted out basically a gif of him like celebrating the goal, like with a sort of speech marks, the Korean guy. So it felt like one of those games that was just meant to be disappointing. Another disappointing day for Haaland. He's a strange one for me. I actually don't think I know he scored loads of goals, but I actually don't think he's had a good start to the season. But he's
Tomo, sorry, I'll come back to you. Sorry to cut across here, but this is like modern day Twitter where people don't have like their own picture as their display picture. It's like a photo of an old player or something like that. There were City accounts that were tweeting like, when are we going to have a conversation about Haaland? He's only scored one non-penalty goal that's decided a game in 2023. And you're like, for God's sake, how are we going for Haaland now?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, but I hate that non-penalty debate, by the way. I hate it when people go, oh, he's not scored that many non-penalty goals. And it's like, well, what's he supposed to do? Miss the penalties?
Yeah, they're quite hard chances as well, aren't they now?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not sort of sitting here and questioning Haaland. I'm just saying, even though he scored loads of goals this season, I don't think he's hit the heights of last season yet, performance-wise. Obviously, he scores all the time, and I would never suggest thinking about dropping him or resting him. It's just not quite worked out for him at the minute, even though at the end of the day, City have played 7, won 6, lost 1. So it's not the end of the world. These things can happen, as Laura predicted. Just move on quickly, I'm sure. And I think they've got Leipzig in the Champions League this week, which will be a tough game. Leipzig are in good form. They've got that Xavi Simons, who looks like a real player. So I'm interested to see what he'll do against City. But I think they'll be like, come on, they'll be fine. They're still favourites for the league. It makes the league more interesting. But yeah, good result for Wolves, and well done, Laura. Kudos.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, mate, off the back of what you've just said, I'm quite looking forward to seeing what happens or what it looks like when Haaland does get going. Because, I mean, 8 goals in 7 games and top of the league is quite a good return for not having started very well. But what I was going to say is this is brilliant, right? This is brilliant for the Premier League because we talk about it being in danger of becoming a farmers' league if Man City just win all the time. They've lost one game. They won every game. Up until now, they've lost one game, and all of a sudden, you've got 5 teams, Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, and Brighton, all within one win of top spot. Yeah. So you've got Tottenham and Arsenal on 17 points, Liverpool on 16, Villa and Brighton on 15, Man City are at the summit on 18. How good is that? If they slip up again, they ain't going to be top anymore. So maybe it ain't such a farmers' league, and maybe we need to give more credit to the chasing bunch, particularly Tottenham and Arsenal this season. And if one of them had won the North London derby, they'd be top now. Laura, so you can't slip up in this league.
And also, what game is it on Sunday? Man City versus Arsenal.
Yeah. Where is it, that one?
Oh, I don't
We'll
know.
talk about it on
It's at
Thursday,
Arsenal.
won't we? But
Yeah, we'll talk about it
yeah,
Thursday. But it is at Arsenal, and it's no Rodri, and Saka's back in full training because I think he came off injured again, didn't he, or limped off, and yeah, they've got this Leipzig game, as Tomo said, and then they've got Arsenal away, and then I think they've got Brighton, who obviously do show up against big sides, and then a nice, easy, winnable game at Old Trafford in the Manchester derby. Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably reflect at the end of October and be like they didn't slip up after Wolves, but it just makes football more exciting when these things are happening, doesn't it? And City aren't winning every week. So we just touched on Old Trafford being a nice, comfortable place to get a result. We spoke about this, didn't we, on the last pod? We said United went and beat Crystal Palace second string, albeit United second string as well, 3-0. How would the first string get against it? I think Loro said about being positive about United, 2 wins, 2 clean sheets. And I thought to himself, yeah, do you know what? You're right. I said about Rashford coming out the side, and he said, let's not get into that. He doesn't need to open up that can of worms about him not playing. But here I am coming off the field after Brett Pittman scored a hat-trick and we've lost 6-2, checking my phone. And Man United have lost 1-0 to Palace. Tomo?
Yeah, we did lose 1-0 to Palace, and it was completely not a surprise. We've not been good this season. We had a good game in the week in the Carabao Cup, and we showered praise on them, but we did caveat that with the fact that we were basically playing against Palace's second string, and it just feels like it's going to be a very long season. Football's really, the reality of football sometimes is quite simple, and it's just if you've got a lot of your first team players out injured and a lot of your best players out injured, it's hard to win games, and it's hard to look really fluent and have a proper identity because at the end of the day, we're playing Sofyan Amrabat at left back. He's a centre midfielder. It's not like it makes no sense that he plays left back. To me, he's a right-footed centre midfielder. Do you know what I mean? And he had a game to forget. We basically had a really difficult day. It's our worst start to a top flight season in 34 years. I thought, and this is probably a little bit of Gary Neville in me, but I thought Onana should have saved Anderson's volley. I know it was a good volley, but I actually thought he should have saved it. It was quite close to him. And it's just not, and this is the thing, this is the difference between signing a Højlund, a 20-year-old striker who needs time and needs patience and needs sort of space to develop in the Premier League and to develop into a world-class player. And at United, he just won't get that. And he's not going to get that because we're relying on him now. And he's just not quite ready for that yet, I don't think, albeit he has had a bright start. And Rashford, once again, he looks short of confidence, and he's one of those players who just seems to go like the highs are really high, but the lows are really low, and it's like his confidence just swings from like pillar to post, and you just don't know what you're going to get with him. What more can I say about United? Let's just move on. Come on.
All right.
I'm just looking at the stats, and I mean the actual stats that have always been looked at. And 77% possession for Man United, 19 shots, 10 corners, but only 4 shots on target. So maybe you're right to pinpoint sort of Rashford and Højlund's lack of potency, or maybe lack of form at the moment in front of goal, as to why you couldn't get a result at home to Crystal Palace on the weekend. But I mean, those stats, normally, if you have those stats 10 weeks in a row, you'll probably win 7 or 8 of them. So maybe not quite all doom and gloom, but I did say that we should be positive when they win, and you'll have plenty of chances to be negative. And this is one of your chances to be negative. So Teaghouse filled his boots. Have you got much more to add to that, Murph?
Just that we've got a Champions League tie tomorrow against Galatasaray, and I said on the last pod, and I completely understand what you chaps were saying about you don't just drop Marcus Rashford. He doesn't need to do that. And he brought Bruno back in, which he was always going to do. He brought Højlund back in, which he was always going to do. But this Hannibal, Garnacho, that sort of thing, I really wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to that tomorrow night and puts Rashford on the bench. He's come out as well today, Ten Hag, and said Rashford's low on confidence, but he needs to work hard to find that, rediscover that form. And I just think that's kind of almost his like initial sort of dig at Marcus Rashford. He's obviously way past that with Sancho at the point where he's publicly calling him out for not training hard enough. But it's almost like that's that first layer of it, isn't it? It's almost a bit of a call to, you need to get yourself out of this rut now. You need to work hard and get through it. And I just wonder if he will maybe change the side up against Galatasaray at home. And maybe then if we win that, does he then go, well, you know what, we stuck with this and it won midweek again, like we did against Palace in the Cup. Why don't we go for it at Brentford at home in the Premier League? What else can happen? We lose every game at home now. What difference can it make by staying with these youngsters and in Garnacho and Hannibal? So not going to be too negative about it. As you say, Loro, stats are on their side, but a really bad day for United. And that's, I mean, 7 games, 3 wins, 9 points from a possible 21 and sort of 14, 15 points off the pace now.
And also 7 goals in 7 games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just we are just blunt in attack. We're just blunt in attack. You've got Pellistri, who at the start of the season, people thought he looked a bit lively every time he come off the bench. So you thought, okay, he could potentially get a few chances. He's had a few chances, and he just looks like it's just not there. He doesn't even look dangerous, really, does he? If there's an over-reliance on Rashford, if Rashford's not scoring and playing well, we are terrible going forward. Like, that's the reality. That's the reality of Manchester United at the minute. And I think Rashford will be allowed to play through this because we have no other options.
Well, Garnacho is a live option. He is a left winger who is lauded across the world as an upcoming talent who's just signed a new long-term deal. We spoke last week on the pod, so we won't go over it again, that players don't seem to play out of position. If Rashford's not playing through his form issue, would it not be a bit of a kick up the arse to be like, right, you're on the bench in the Champions League at home to Galatasaray for Garnacho, and then it gets through to the Prem game where Rashford suddenly thinks, oh, I'll be back in for that, and he's just like, no, we're going for Garnacho again because he played well in the week. I'm all, if Garnacho didn't light it up, I know we've got Rashford there, and he did score his goals last year, but is that not the next level of, right, well, we're not just going to try and play you through it. We'll try and give you a bit of a kick up the arse to get some form by playing someone else who plays your position.
Yeah, to be honest, mate, at the end of the day, we're losing anyway, aren't we? So yeah. What's he got to lose? Like,
yeah, I mean, his job. And just on that, obviously doing okay in the Carabao Cup, albeit 1 game, but Champions League we've obviously lost. Galatasaray, couple of stats about that game. The manager of that is the manager who was in charge of, do you remember when we lost to Istanbul where United conceded that goal where, was it Demba Ba just ran through from a corner by himself from the halfway line? Zaha scored for Galatasaray at the weekend, who has always loved to go against United since we sold him. So, yeah, I'm not really that confident about tomorrow night either, to be honest with you. But we'll leave Man United there because I'm sure we'll be back on Thursday talking about them again. Other results, boys. Arsenal won away at Bournemouth, absolutely dominant. 4-0 victory there, and Kai Havertz got off the mark. So I think he got to 007, didn't he? But didn't make it to 008 with his goal. Luton won very impressively, and I need to apologise to them because I think we did a 5-second kind of cover of their Everton game, and we said that Everton would, or I certainly said Everton would wipe the floor with them, and Luton are going down without a victory all season. But great win there for Rob Edwards and Luton. Newcastle won, albeit have got some injuries, so their good form continued. But rather than talk about the Prem game, Tomo, just want to quickly talk about the Champions League game they've got coming up against PSG on Wednesday and what your thoughts are on that.
I think Newcastle win. I can't wait to watch that, and I can't wait to listen to how loud it's going to be in the St. James's Park. And I just think PSG have actually started, I think they're not even in the top 4 in League One.
They're 5th.
Yeah. And albeit they've had a couple of good wins and they look a little bit more like a team than they did last season when you got your Messis and Neymars and like Verrattis. I think they've got rid of like the big name individuals and brought in some sort of team players. But yeah, I'll just fancy Newcastle for that one, and it'll be a great night for everyone involved. What I was going to say actually was I think a sort of a thread about Newcastle's uptick in form has actually coincided with them dropping Tonali, and Bruno Guimaraes as his form has got better since Tonali's left or sort of been dropped, and I just wonder whether those two can coexist and bring the best out of each other. But it's good that Eddie Howe's got those options. Basically, Longstaff has replaced Tonali in the team, and obviously they've won 3 in a row. They've won 3 in a row now in the Premier League. So it'd be interesting to see how that develops. But it's also good for Tonali, I guess, to sort of come out of the limelight a little bit and ease his way into Premier League and ease his way into sort of the Northeast, because I don't think he started. I know he got the goal on the first day of the season, but I don't think he started so well. And yeah, just a sort of a thing I picked up on is actually, yeah, they've started playing better and their results have started getting better since he's not started for them.
That feels a little bit like sort of Mason Mount coming in, doesn't it, and sitting next to Casemiro, and it being like, can those two coexist? But can you drop someone who you've signed for 60 mil to be your new midfielder? If Eddie Howe's making that decision to bring Longstaff in, who was at the club before, and drop Tonali that's been signed for money, and maybe he's got a bit more depth in that position where he can do that and give Tonali almost a season to embed like Pep does with players sometimes. That's obviously a nice position to be in, but that feels fairly similar to United, albeit United don't seem to have those options. Lauro, the Champions League game, obviously PSG just said a fifth there. Tomo fancies Newcastle. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the League table and it's off its head. I mean, Lyon are bottom, Marseille are 12th, and PSG are 5th. And I'm not going to lie to everyone and say I'm a huge French football enthusiast, but I've also just looked at the odds and Newcastle are favourites. And we've spoken about what a good place St James's Park can be to host football, and this will be the biggest game that they've had there in a long time. I don't really see past Newcastle winning that game. And I think it's a good point about Tonali. When you bring someone in like that, Newcastle's midfield was very good last year, and it will take time to culture the sort of equilibrium of that midfield into having Tonali in and making it work. But Longstaff was very, very good last season, and they normally perform better when he was in the team. So he's not just like a walkover that you just come in and get rid of. If he plays, he normally plays quite well. So Tonali's going to have work to do, but they're going to need all the options, aren't they? Because they've already got a couple of injuries, and at some point, it's nice to be able to rotate players and pick out of all of them. But at some point, having squad depth is about still having quality when you've got injuries and you don't have a choice. And if Tonali's injured, Longstaff's ready, or the other way around. So good options for Eddie Howe, and we've spoken about before. He's very good at managing that, and I'm sure he'll continue to do so. But I'm looking forward to watching that game as well, and I expect Newcastle to win it, to be honest with you.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, good luck to them. That is a huge game, and as you say, St James's Park be rocking. Boys, Super Sunday, or not much of a Super Sunday. Forest versus Brentford ended in a 1-1 draw, and I don't want to be speaking too much more about VAR, but Lauro, I think you might have sent through in the WhatsApp a video of the penalty incident for Visser. I mean, I'm trying to work out what the referees have done there. The only thing I can think is Visser gets straight back up to try and get to the ball as if it's going to be a tap in, and I wonder if that swayed their decision. And if he'd have just stayed down and put his arms up, VAR would have given it. But that looked a shocker to me as well.
That's the worst one of the weekend. I don't. Why is there no PGMOL explanation on that one? They should be coming out and holding their hands up again, saying, "Please don't fire me. I've made an absolute howler and let everyone down. I've let my family down. I've let football fans down. I've let everyone down. I've let the history of our beautiful game down by not giving that." What? Because Visser was honest and got back up to his feet because he wanted to get to the ball and still thought there could be a chance. It was nice to see that from him. But honestly, I've not seen. Has there been a counter argument to why that wasn't given? I don't get it at all. Tigo, you look like poised to say something. Change my mind.
No one watched it because they're all watching the Ryder Cup. That's why it's not. That's why no one caused like a big fuss over it. That's basically it.
Well, I watched it, and let me tell you, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was spitting feathers at the end of the game. He could not believe that there wasn't a penalty given. And honestly, I want someone to come out and say, talk about Liverpool asking for the audio now for the offside one, even though they put their hands up and said, that's just going under the radar. Whoever was VAR there, even the ref, but whoever was VAR there needs to come out and say, this is why this isn't a penalty. And I'll be shocked if he can do that. Honestly, I don't know what to say on that one. And because it's not a massive talking point, it'll just go under the radar. But that was the worst one of the weekend, in my opinion. Clear penalty. Stonewall.
Tomo, anything to say on that, to any counter argument?
No, absolutely not. It was a penalty. But what can you do? You can talk about these decisions until we're blue in the face. But
yeah,
do you know what I
It
mean?
wasn't even contentious. That's what I mean. I don't get that. I haven't. You said you put the Curtis Jones one on Twitter, the freeze frame, and loads of people came back and said it was a red card. Fair enough. If you put that one up, I want to see.
I did. I put it up on Twitter last night, and everyone slated me for even saying, "Is that a debate?" I said, "Debate. Is it a penalty or not a penalty?" And everyone was like, "Well, there's no debate. Of course, it's a penalty." So,
yeah,
I am absolutely Richard Keys.
yeah,
Beached her.
Yeah. Well, full house there, boys. A mad decision in a mad weekend, and then finally, West Ham won 2-0 against Sheffield United. It wasn't quite the 1-0 that Tomo said Sheffield United would be buoyed with and be a massive confidence boost. They did ship a second, but are they going to be bringing a new manager in soon? Because that's starting to look pretty dire for them now. And Paul Heckingbottom, but I've not seen anything so far that his job's at risk or anything. But something's got to give there. And then tonight's action is West London derby, Fulham versus Chelsea. I think we all said 0-0 on the last pod. So unless anyone has got any changes to that, then I think we will stick with that and move on to the Championship. So boys, Championship. Loro, going to start with Southampton Leeds. Again, another prediction that you made that you really didn't like that game for Leeds, and turned out to be the case. Southampton 3, Leeds 1. Just one thing I want to say on the VAR is I watched the highlights, and I remember looking at the first goal and thinking, if there was VAR, Adam Armstrong looked offside to me. It looked like he was ahead of the line before he went and chipped it in. And they're the sort of decisions that might then change a game in the Championship. But would you have VAR in the Championship to stop that?
No, definitely not. And Southampton deserved to win the game. Adam Armstrong was very good. Leeds weren't at it. It was probably the first time this season I've been disappointed, all things considered, with how we played and the way we went about the game. I'm not going to start talking about heart and desire, but sometimes you're just off it, and that can happen in the Championship. And you can't do it against teams like Southampton. And I did say last week, we've got a habit of meeting teams that seemingly aren't doing very well, but have quality players. And as soon as they play against Leeds, they express themselves, and Adam Armstrong scores within 2 minutes. But Southampton absolutely deserved to win the game. Leeds deserved to lose it. Daniel Farke's come under a little bit of criticism for playing this, not bringing Joe Rodon back in. He was suspended for the game before, but I don't blame him for that. If you beat Watford 3-0 and play well, I don't think you should probably change it. But we've got QPR Wednesday night, and I'm sure Joe Rodon will come into the centre of defence. And it'll be interesting to see if he leaves out Liam Cooper or Pascal Struijk. And we'll probably get a little bit of an insight there into who his favoured partnership is. But yeah, and that was probably the better prediction, because I said exactly what would happen, and it did, and it was very disappointing. But that's the Championship for you, and we got beat by a Southampton side that were better than us on the day.
Yeah, a bit of respite for Russell Martin and that Southampton side. As you say, Leeds host QPR tomorrow, and then Southampton go to Stoke, who did have a good result themselves, but they'll be looking to get back-to-back wins there. A result that absolutely shocked me until I went and checked the sides out was Preston 0, West Brom 4. Thought Preston would continue their, I think, unbeaten run at Deepdale, but was an absolute battering by West Brom. But I went and looked at West Brom's side, and I couldn't believe some of the kind of strength and good quality of players they had in there. They're up to 8th now, but a massive result for them. And they've got Sheffield Wednesday at home midweek, and if they go and win that, they'll probably be into the playoffs. But I hadn't really given West Brom as much credit as their side deserved, really.
Can I just say, no one's left West Brom in about 10 years, I don't think. They've got the exact same team they had when they got relegated from the Premier League in like 2012. Matt Phillips started on the wing. I mean, how long has he been there? Dean Garner, he was there last time they got promoted when Bielsa was in the Championship. You know, Kyle Bartley's still there. They've just seemed to have the same team year in, year out. And Carlos Corberán, who is a manager that sort of built up a good reputation for himself, I think this season is just starting to come, not under pressure, but a couple of question marks. When's it going to get going, Carlos? Maybe this will be the catalyst for them. But that's a very good result. And I do feel sorry for Teagow, who predicted Preston to win at the weekend, hadn't lost a game all season, and then shipped 4 home at the fortress that is Deepdale. So, commiserations, but good win for Corberán and West Brom.
Yeah, I was just about to address the elephant in the room, and that was my pick for the podcast treble. I was so confident that they'd go and win, but this is football. This is football heritage.
Yeah, none of us can covered ourselves in too much glory with our pyramid pod predictions, so we'll be back later in the pod for redemption on that. Preston, so obviously they'll be looking to bounce back midweek. Probably got the toughest game of the season as they go away to Leicester. Leicester went and won 4-1 away at Blackburn. Tomo, I saw you uploaded the Dewsbury Hall goal, who looks a cut above in the Championship. But Jamie Vardy scored again. He seems to be finding a bit of form. And I think Iniacho scored as well. So they've still got some serious customers at that level. And if they can beat Preston, then they'd have made a really, really solid start to life in the Championship.
A really solid start?
Well, an amazing start. They'd be top of the league.
9 wins from 10 games.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Seriously solid. Watford 2, Middlesbrough 3. So great result for Michael Carrick's men. I think they got a victory last time out and have followed it up with back-to-back. They've got Cardiff at home midweek, but Cardiff are absolutely flying as well. But hopefully Michael Carrick can continue that run of form and start to surge back up through the table. Friday night football saw Sheffield Wednesday v Sunderland. Sunderland went and won 3-0. And Tomo, Jack Clarke impressed.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so Teagow's EFL corner comes to you courtesy of Jack Clarke this week. He scored 2 against Wednesday. I watched the highlights and he just reminded me of sort of early days Jack Grealish for Villa. And he looks like a real player. And Laura, obviously, I know you know a lot about him because he's a former Leeds player. Burst onto the scenes, didn't he? When was he 17 or 16 or 17, and he started playing in your first team. Then he got his move to Spurs and kind of faded away a little bit. Didn't do anything there, and he's had some sort of so-so loans since then. I think he went on loan to Sunderland the year before last, and then Sunderland signed him for around 8 million last summer. He had a good season last year in the Championship. He got 9 goals and made 12 assists, which sort of perked the interest of Premier League clubs. He actually nearly joins Burnley this summer, but Sunderland basically said, no way is he going. I think Burnley made a £15 million bid and it was rejected. Yeah. So great decision for them because he looks like he is sort of up there with probably one of the best players in the Championship. He's got 7 goals in 10 games this season, a goal every 117 minutes. He scored 3 penalties, which the Twitter non-penalty brigades will be out in full force slating me for that. But actually, for 3 of those penalties, he won 2 of them. So heavily involved in the build-up as well. Mowbray described him on the weekend as unplayable. And yeah, he looks like a cut above, basically. And they'll find it very difficult to keep him beyond January, I believe, because he just looks levels above that league at the minute.
Yeah, great win for Sunderland. And they're up into 4th place now, and they host Watford, who obviously lost at home to Middlesbrough at the weekend. So they'll be looking to continue that good run of form and close the gap on the top 3. And then Ipswich, who are in 2nd place, drew 1-1 with Huddersfield. And they have Hull at home, who are in 5th midweek. So they'll be looking to bounce back there, but so will Hull, who drew 1-1 with Plymouth, I believe. So some really good midweek action for the Championship there, and we'll review the best of it on Thursday. Boys, we'll move on to League One, and just to run through some of the kind of key results from there. So Portsmouth, who were first, won 2-1 away at Wigan after going 1-0 down. Good comeback for them, and they stay top, and their excellent start continues. Laura, second place Oxford won 3-1 away at Stevenage, who were in third. So that was a pretty big game at the top of the table, but Oxford just seemed to be going from strength to strength, and a side that you'd mentioned that you'd liked before.
Yeah, I think you come to me on Oxford every week and I say the same things, but yeah, very good win. I said last week, I think League One table's shaping up probably a little bit like what it will look like at the end of the season. That a lot of the big teams that you expect to be up there are creeping up there, and Oxford are one of them. So nothing more to add. Another good win. I think the biggest thing about that is it was at Stevenage, who are also very good and very difficult to beat under Steve Evans, and they've come out the better. So that's a very good sign for them. But it's still early days. But Oxford, BBC Sport is telling me, have got a game in hand to go top as well. So if they win that, they're flying, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's the top three. In fourth place, Bolton, they went and won 1-0 away at Port Vale. So Dion Charles scored again for them. Bagsman at that level, and seems to be scoring loads of goals. Lincoln 2, Cheltenham 0. Now, not a top of the table clash, but another loss for Cheltenham and another game without a goal. They've got a bottom of the table clash midweek where they'll be looking to get off the mark there. But that's against Fleetwood, who we spoke about last week, who got Lee Johnson in charge. And they got off the mark. They got their first win of the season by beating Leyton Orient 1-0. So they'll be travelling to 24th place Cheltenham, looking to go back-to-back there. Some of the other fixtures within League One midweek. So spoke about fourth place Bolton. They host third place Stevenage. So to get back to winning ways, but Bolton looking strong. Portsmouth in first place, they got ninth place Wickham. Second place Oxford go to Shrewsbury in 18th. And then bottom of the table Cheltenham, who are yet to score, host 23rd place Fleetwood, which is an absolute basement game. But yeah, Fleetwood be looking to go back to back, and Cheltenham will just look to be getting their first goal of the season. Move on to League Two, boys.
Murph,
yeah, go on, Tomo.
Can I just quickly do our weekly mention of Derby?
Yeah, please do.
So I don't know if you boys saw this in the highlights, and it's a little bit of a somber one, this one. But they drew 0-0 to Cambridge, but in the 31st minute, the play came to a halt for a minute's applause because Derby's goalkeeper, Josh Vickers, he's 27 years old, and his wife, Laura, sadly passed away from cancer just 3 months after they got married. And I don't really know what to say on this matter, apart from I just wanted to bring it up because we always argue about these silly VAR decisions and like all of these little things that don't, in the grand scheme of things, don't matter. And it just put things in perspective for me. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it's just sad, really. It's just a sad thing.
It's a good point, Tomo, as well, because when we're talking about these people who are dropping bad displays or doing X, Y, and Z, they're young lads, aren't they? All younger than us now, like playing footy, and you got stuff like that happening as well. So yeah, I actually think in the highlights, Paul Warne said that, you know, result didn't matter, puts everything into perspective, and yeah, it does. But yeah, it's horrible for him, but nice mention.
Yeah, nice mention, Teagle. And just move on a little bit in League One there before we go on to League Two. Did either of you see Joey Barton come out and absolutely blast his player in the post-match interview?
Did they lose to Peterborough or something, and then he came out in a BBC interview?
Yeah, they lost to Peterborough, and his whole interview after the game was slating one player. Luke Thomas, I think his name is, a winger. And he said that with 1 minute left of half time, he said he was feeling his hamstring or something like that. And then he blamed him for a goal that went in just afterwards or something, I think. And he absolutely blasted him. And you only have to look at the comments from all the Bristol Rovers fans sort of saying, get out of our club and this sort of thing to see whose side they were on. But I just thought I'd bring that up as well, because obviously a colourful character in the past, Joey Barton, and it still seems as though he's pulling no punches in charge of Bristol Rovers in League One. But yeah, their winger Luke Thomas, I think, he didn't even look like he was at fault for a goal. It just looked like he, you know, normally what you'd expect to see from a winger chasing back a opposition when you're going towards goal, and it didn't really look like his fault. But Joey Barton decided that it was, and he soon got dragged 4 minutes after half time. But yeah, it led to an absolute explosive rant from Joey Barton after the game, and yeah, he certainly hasn't won any more fans from that, Joey Barton, judging by the comments. But if you haven't seen it, take a look at it after this, because it was, it was quite shocking, actually.
That's not like Joey, is it?
No, I was going to say normally a straight shooter, not like Joey that, but yeah, I'll have a look at that. Boys, we'll move on to League Two briefly. So, I mean, some of the games in this league: Colchester 5, Notts County 4. Notts County were top of the table. I think most people would have had them to beat Colchester in their ACCA. Colchester go and score 5. Notts County score 4 away from home and leave with nothing. The only positive for them is Macaulay Langstaff, who obviously I think he scored 40 plus goals last season. Got a brace for them. But what a result for Colchester, and that League Two is just on spice, really.
Murph, can I ask you boys a question?
Go on.
Okay, so we obviously always talk about Wrexham, but this week I'm going to mention them because they had another mad game. It was 3-3. They had a player sent off after about 30 minutes. And what the question I wanted to ask you boys was, which former Marseille striker scored a 95th minute equaliser for Wrexham?
Fletcher.
Stephen Fletcher. As I live and breathe, 36 years old. I had no idea he was even at Wrexham.
No.
And also, did you boys see Mullin's first goal?
Yeah.
Overhead kick. Absolute worldie. And that's his first goal of the season. It's going to be first of many. Well, he scored 2, didn't he, on the weekend? But yeah, now he's back fit and firing. They'll obviously go on a run again. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you boys about Fletcher. Matt, I didn't even know he still played.
They're good though, aren't they? Notts County and Wrexham. Every week we're talking about them like on the wrong end of being beat 5 or 3-3 or 5-4 or 4-3. Like they just seem to be teams that just want to outscore the opponents. They're brilliant for the game and brilliant for League Two. And Notts County are top and Wrexham are just outside the playoffs. They're probably going to both be right at the end of the season. So yeah, it's nice to see a bit of character down there in League Two.
And here's another one for you as well, because I just checked my notes about that game.
Go on.
So, which former West Brom player conceded the penalty for Wrexham?
James McLean.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue he played for Wrexham either.
Why would you?
Yeah. Well, is he not on the documentary, Fletcher? Or
no, Fletcher only signed a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, the documentary is about last season.
Oh, okay, cool. We'll be on series 3, so you can swat up them when those two are on it. There's a couple of characters for you, Steve Fletcher and James McLean. But yeah, Mullin brace, as you said, Tomo, Langstaff brace at Notts County, 2 absolute bagsmen in the National League, starting to make waves in League Two as well. And as you say, Mullin back in and got his season off to a start now. So hopefully the first and second of many there. Big game in League Two, finished 1-1 between Gillingham and Mansfield, which I think was second versus third. Crawley, who are up there as well, beat Sutton 3-0. But there were also wins for Swindon, AFC Wimbledon and Stockport. And I will just make a special mention for Stockport. Louis Barry, who was the star of, I think, episode 15 of this pod, former Galactico at Barcelona, scored again for Stockport, and that's now 7 games in a row. And I think a player that Tomo highlighted is continuing to do the business. So yeah, shout out to Louis.
Yeah, Bradford lost 3-1 at home to Walsall as well. I mean, where does Mark Hughes... I mean, he must be coming under some sort of pressure soon, because I think this is like his 3rd season at the club. They're still in League Two. They're getting beat at home by Walsall. They're 14th in the league. He's obviously sort of taken a little bit of a lower job to what you'd usually think from him. But maybe this is this is quite a good example of why you don't normally see this kind of thing, because if he gets let go at Bradford, there's not really any way back for him, is there? You wouldn't have thought.
But I think that's a good example of how lower league clubs can't afford to sack their manager. And obviously, Mark Hughes will probably be on a good whack, even if it's not your Premier League level wages. And he probably signed I don't know, so this is all speculation, but he probably signed a 3-year deal, didn't he? And they probably, at various points of this mediocre sort of stint in charge of Bradford, they probably wanted to make the change. But a club like Bradford just can't afford to sort of carry on paying 2 managers, can they?
It's quite an interesting experiment, I think, because it's quite unprecedented. You don't normally, other than when Sven-Goran Eriksson went to Notts County, took Sol Campbell with him, and then they both left after a game. You don't normally see this sort of thing. So it will be interesting to see how it transpires. I mean, it's a massive shout for Bradford. If they did want to get rid of Mark Hughes and they want to bring in, I don't know, someone else from League Two, it's going to be a bit of a culture shock going from Mark Hughes to a name that probably most of the fans have never heard of. Just an interesting dynamic one to keep an eye on, because I don't think they're going to be too far away from wanting to make a change, looking at them at 14th place in the table with a negative goal difference.
Yeah, completely agree. But 4 points off the playoffs in League Two, which is obviously the beauty of it. 3 points separates first to 8th place in that league, from 20 points down to 17. And then you got Wrexham, Barrow, MK Dons, Morecambe, Walsall leapfrogged Bradford with that win. But Bradford are in 14th and they're on 13 points, only 4 points off it. So a couple results there, and suddenly Mark Hughes is flying again. So yeah, be interesting to see. Though negative goal difference probably isn't what the board had in mind there, especially with the season they had last year. But I did see Andy Cook scored, didn't he, at the weekend? So I don't know if he's carried on banging in the goals this season or whether.
Yeah, he scored a hat-trick last week as well. Andy Cook at Bradford, by the way, Teagal, who in March, in the National League, there's no transfer window, or there is, but it doesn't shut until March. It was open all year until March. And Yeovil's steward/owner at the time tweeted out saying that we were going to be signing someone. And Murph thought Bradford's top goal scorer and League Two's top goal scorer, Andy Cook, was an attainable target for us and was expecting him to be unveiled on the Hewish Park steps. You were. And when it turned out to be Sheffield United under-18 defender Miguel Freckleton, there were some interesting reactions.
No, can I just say that we were talking about this steward who was coming in, who had money to blow, and he was like, I'm going to make some signings that will blow everything out the water. And he tweeted an emoji which was of a chef, you know, the chef emoji where it's got the white hat and holding a wooden spoon up. He put that up and I thought, fuck me, it's Andy Cook. But yeah, as Laurie said, we went on to sign an 18-year-old Sheffield United centre back, and the striker was a young man called Rio Griffiths who couldn't hit a barn door. So yeah, that went horribly wrong. But yeah, not my finest prediction, but by no means my worst either. Just a quick look at the midweek action, boys, for League Two as well. First place Notts County host third place Swindon in another big game. Crawley go to 21st place Doncaster, which will have some more. 7th place Crew host 4th place Gillingham, so again another big game, and then 5th place Mansfield host 9th place Wrexham. So all those sides up the top are playing each other at the minute, so be interesting to see who gets the wins to get a bit of breathing space. But that also, as you say, gives those teams in the middle of the table a chance to claw back some points and get up into the playoffs. Boys, we will finish with the Pyramid Pod treble. I'd firstly like to apologise to anyone who backed the first edition. So we touched on Preston earlier. They lost 4-0. I think, Loro, did you go for Bristol City, who were 2-0 up and ended up losing 3-2 at home to Stoke? Is that right?
Correct.
And I had Exeter, who I think lost 2-0 to Northampton. So not the finest start. I've had tweets from a few people saying bring back spin the wheel, which is, just goes to show how bad the first treble was. But we will be going again, and we are looking for redemption. Loro, I will start with you first for your selection, please.
I would just say that I've seen this bet in its entirety in advance, and my eyebrows are raised. So we're going to have to ask for a lot of trust from the listeners here if they're going to get on board. But I will start with, I've got Plymouth at home, haven't I? Can't even remember who they're playing now, but they've been very good at home all last season. I think the last home game they put 6 past Norwich, so I expect them to win tomorrow night, and they're playing someone kind of mid-table. Millwall, that's it. So yeah, I expect the Pilgrims to go and smash the Millwall tomorrow night.
Plymouth 7-5 at home, and obviously from that cutting edge analysis there, you can see how seriously we do take this treble. Tomo,
I'm going to go for the Terriers. Huddersfield are playing Birmingham. Birmingham have not won a football match since August, and Huddersfield have not lost a football match since August. Birmingham beating Huddersfield. Huddersfield have had a sort of a a decent start under Darren Moore. They nearly beat Ipswich on the weekend, but were pegged back to an 87th minute equaliser. I feel like they've got something going down there, and I think they're going to beat Birmingham. And the odds are good. They're 12-5, so I quite like the odds there because it obviously bumps up our winnings a bit. So that's why I've gone for them, Loro. And I know you're raising your eyebrows at me.
No, we're not passing any judgment. We went 0 for 3 last time out. So, yeah, up the Terriers. Well, it's pointless me really even saying my side after that. But I've gone for Crawley. Crawley are away at Doncaster. They're 8-5. So a bit of rationale as to why I've picked them. And that is since they lost 6-0 versus Swindon, which I know won't feel you were confident, but they have taken 13 points in 5 games and they've scored 16 goals in those 5 games. And they also scored 4 in their Papa John's Trophy game as well, I think it was. So 20 goals in their last 6 in all comps. They're top of the League 2 form table. I really fancy them at the Keep Moat. And yeah, at those odds, I'm going to have them. And with that bet on, a £10 stake at odds of 20-1 returns circa £210. I would just say that obviously check your bookmakers. You might get slightly differential odds to that. Or if you do it tomorrow, they might be slightly different, but that's what we've got currently. And we obviously in jest said that Tomo would be donating half of his if we won at the weekend. But what we're going to do is we will probably either each have a charity or stick with a central charity. And if the bet does go on to win, half of the winnings throughout this pyramid pod, if we can find a winner at any stage, we'll go to charity. So obviously we'll keep you posted on that. But that's the treble. Huddersfield away at Birmingham, Plymouth at home to Millwall, and Crawley Town away at Doncaster. Absolute banker. Boys, that's all we've got time for tonight. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll obviously review all of the European and EFL action, and we'll look ahead to the weekend's Prem action from there. So pleasure as always. Cheers, chaps.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.